The room was dark, save for the soft light coming from the desk lamp, casting long shadows across the cluttered room. Evelyn sat at her desk, staring at the pile of papers before her, a notebook open to an unfinished thought. Her mind felt scattered, as if the ideas she'd been chasing for months were just out of reach. How does it all connect? She muttered to herself, the question hanging in the air like an unsolved riddle. She ran a hand through her hair, eyes scanning the notes. She knew she was onto something, but the pieces weren't falling into place. The door creaked open, and her colleague, Marcus, stepped in. "Still at it?" he asked, his voice gentle. Evelyn didn't look up, but nodded. "I can feel it. Something's pulling at me, Marcus. It's like there's this invisible force I can't see, but it's controlling everything around me." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Maybe you're overthinking it." Evelyn's eyes locked onto his. "No, it's real. I know it is." She turned the notebook toward him, the scribbles forming into a diagram she didn't fully understand herself. "Look at this. It's all connected. Everything we think we know about reality, about how the world works. There's something more to it, something we're not seeing." Marcus took a step forward, his skepticism evident, but Evelyn's conviction made him pause. "Maybe," he said slowly. "But you're chasing ghosts, Evelyn. You need to be careful." Evelyn's hands trembled as she traced a line on the page. "What if the ghost is chasing us?" Evelyn's fingers hovered over the notebook, the weight of the diagram drawing her in. She could almost feel the pull, like a force outside herself guiding her thoughts. "You don't get it, Marcus," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, as if afraid to say the words aloud. "This is bigger than us. It's like there's a hidden pattern, something controlling all of this." Marcus shifted, the skepticism still evident in his posture. "You're reading too much into it," he said, but Evelyn shook her head. "No, I'm not. There's something about this diagram, something that connects everything. The way we think, how we act, it's all being controlled by something we can't even see." She paused, her hand trembling as she pointed at the diagram. "Look at the way everything interlocks. It's not just coincidence." Marcus looked at the diagram again, his expression softening slightly. "Maybe, but how do we stop it?" Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "We don't, we expose it." The weight of the conversation pressed down on them both. "What are you suggesting, Evelyn?" Marcus asked, his voice strained. Evelyn's eyes met his, intense and unwavering. "I'm suggesting that everything we believe to be true is being manipulated by forces beyond our comprehension, and we're caught in the middle of it." Marcus took a step back, his mind racing. "How do you even begin to prove something like that?" Evelyn closed the notebook, her fingers lingering on the cover. "By starting with what we know, we gather the evidence piece by piece. We look for the pattern, Marcus. It's there if we're brave enough to see it." Marcus' eyes searched hers for a sign of doubt, but found none. "You're serious," he muttered. Evelyn nodded slowly. "I've never been more serious." The door to the cafe creaked as it opened, letting in a rush of cold air. Evelyn barely noticed, her mind still spinning from the conversation she'd just had with Marcus. She hadn't expected this much resistance, but the doubts creeping into her mind were hard to ignore. She looked at the door, as if trying to escape the weight of the decision hanging over her. "What if we're wrong?" Marcus asked, his voice soft, but still sharp with uncertainty. Evelyn turned to him, her expression hardening. "We're not wrong, Marcus. We're just ahead of everyone else. People aren't ready to see it, but we have to show them." Marcus leaned against the counter, his face etched with doubt. "I don't know, Evelyn. You're asking a lot. Too much, maybe." Evelyn's eyes locked onto his, determination replacing the doubt in her own heart. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you. We do this or we don't. But I'm going forward with or without you." The tension between them hung thick in the air, but Marcus knew she wasn't backing down. Neither of them were. The cafe was nearly empty now, save for the occasional clink of a spoon against a ceramic cup. Evelyn's mind still raced, but there was a quiet certainty that had settled over her. She could feel it now more than ever, the invisible thread pulling her toward the truth, urging her to push forward. Marcus, however, looked more uncertain by the minute. "Are you sure we can do this?" he asked, his voice filled with hesitation. Evelyn met his gaze, her resolve unshakable. "We have to. We're the only ones who can." She paused, her eyes narrowing as she continued. "I know it's dangerous, but if we don't act now, we'll lose everything. They're not going to stop until we're silenced." Marcus took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging. "Then, I guess we do this together, huh?" Evelyn nodded, the weight of their shared responsibility settling between them. Together. The tension in the air was thick as Evelyn and Marcus sat in silence, the diagram still open on the desk between them. Evelyn's eyes were fixed on the page, but her thoughts were far away, lost in the intricate patterns she saw forming. "What do we do next?" Marcus asked, his voice cutting through the quiet, but Evelyn didn't answer immediately. "We observe," she said finally, her voice soft but certain. "We keep digging. There's something here, Marcus, something no one else is seeing." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the window where the city outside felt distant and insignificant. "How do you know it's not just a coincidence?" he asked, still unsure. "Because I feel it," Evelyn replied, her voice unwavering. "It's like something is pulling us in this direction. We've got to trust it." Marcus didn't say anything for a long moment, then finally sighed. "I can't just blindly follow you into this, Evelyn. We need proof." Evelyn looked up, meeting his eyes. "We will find it. But we can't ignore this feeling." The days blurred together as Evelyn and Marcus delved deeper into the strange connections she had uncovered. Uncovered. The further they went, the more disjointed their work seemed to become. Marcus was growing weary. "I don't get it," he said one night, running his hand through his hair. "These connections, they don't make sense. How can they all be tied to something invisible?" Evelyn, however, had never been more sure. "I don't know, but they are," she replied, her voice thick with determination. "There's something behind this all, something we can't see." Marcus' eyes narrowed. "Then what do you think we're up against, Evelyn?" Evelyn paused, her mind racing. "The forces that control everything," she said quietly. "The hidden forces that shape our reality." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to decide if he should believe her. Finally, he spoke. "And you think they're controlling us?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "Not just us. Everyone." The breakthrough came when Evelyn stumbled across a news article from years ago. She sat frozen, her hand gripping the paper tightly, her eyes scanning the words. "It's all connected," she whispered to herself, barely believing what she was seeing. "Everything we've been looking for is right here." Marcus leaned over, his interest piqued. "What is it?" he asked. Evelyn pointed to the article with trembling fingers. "This organization," she said, "they've been involved in every major shift in society. Politics, technology, even the economy. It's all been influenced by them." Marcus' heart raced. "You're saying this organization is behind everything? Everything we know?" Evelyn nodded slowly, her face pale. "I think they've been controlling us for generations. And now they're trying to control the future." Marcus took a step back, his mind spinning. "And how do we stop them?" The question now wasn't how they would prove their findings, but what they would do with them. Evelyn sat in front of the computer, typing furiously as Marcus paced behind her. "We can't just expose them," Marcus said, his voice rising. "We don't even know who they really are. We don't have enough." Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes tired but filled with purpose. "But we can't do nothing either, Marcus. We've found a thread. If we pull it, we'll find the whole web." Marcus crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "And what if pulling the thread makes it worse? What if we're playing into their hands?" Evelyn didn't answer right away, the fear of the unknown heavy in her chest. Finally, she said, "Then we face them head on. We have no choice now." Marcus hesitated. "And if they find out what we're doing?" Evelyn's gaze hardened. "Then we make sure they don't." The next morning, the city felt different. The air was charged, as though everything was on the brink of something monumental. Evelyn stared out the window, her mind racing with possibilities. "Do you think they're already watching us?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence. Evelyn turned, her expression hardening. "If they are, then they've been watching us all along. But now we know." She moved toward the desk, her eyes scanning the cluttered notes and diagrams. "We're not just trying to understand them anymore. We're fighting them." Marcus stood beside her, his eyes full of doubt but also something else. Resolve. "Then we fight," he said, his voice steady. "All the way." Evelyn smiled faintly. "We don't have a choice." Evelyn sat at the desk, her fingers shaking as she scrolled through page after page of encrypted files. "This is it," she whispered, eyes wide, as the truth began to take shape in front of her. Marcus stood behind her, his arms crossed, still unsure. "How do we even know these files are real?" he asked. Evelyn didn't look up. "I've cross-referenced every single one. These aren't just theories anymore. This is evidence." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "They've been controlling everything, Marcus. Politics, media, even our thought." Marcus took a deep breath. "This is bigger than I thought." Evelyn nodded, her mind racing. "We need to get this out there. We need to show the world." Marcus stepped closer, his face serious. "And what if they come after us?" Evelyn turned to face him, her eyes burning with determination. "Then we make sure they know we're not backing down." The air in the room felt thick, like it was pressing in on them from all sides. Evelyn and Marcus knew they had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "We're in this now, Evelyn," Marcus said, his voice low, a hint of fear creeping in. "There's no turning back." Evelyn stood up from her chair, her face set with resolve. "I know, but we don't have a choice. They're controlling everything, Marcus. The world is built on their lies, and we can't let them keep getting away with it." Marcus hesitated, his doubt still lingering. "And what if we're wrong? What if all of this is just some massive coincidence?" Evelyn locked eyes with him. "We're not wrong. We've seen it. We've felt it. And now we expose it, together." Marcus's expression softened, but there was still uncertainty in his eyes. "I'm with you, Evelyn. Let's do this." The next step was terrifying. They had everything they needed, but exposing it meant risking their lives. Evelyn paced the room, her thoughts racing. "We need a platform," she said suddenly, stopping in her tracks. "We need to reach as many people as possible." Marcus nodded slowly, but his hesitation was obvious. "How do we get that kind of access? We don't have the connections or the resources." Evelyn's gaze hardened. "We make our own way. We get the information out there, even if we have to do it ourselves." Marcus looked at her, doubt in his eyes. "What if they find us before we can do anything?" Evelyn took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling in her chest. "Then we fight. But we can't back down now. We've already gone too far." Marcus stood still for a moment, then nodded. "I'm in." The night was quiet, almost eerily so. Evelyn and Marcus had just finished setting up the makeshift broadcast station in their apartment. The glow of the camera light was the only thing illuminating the room. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn turned to him, her face pale but resolute. "We don't have a choice. This is our shot. If we don't do this now, we may never get the chance." She adjusted the camera, taking a steadying breath. "This will change everything, Marcus." He nodded slowly, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm ready." Evelyn looked back at the camera, her hands steady as she adjusted the settings. "Then let's do this, for the truth." As the broadcast began, the weight of what they were doing hit Evelyn like a physical blow. She could feel her heart racing, her palms sweating. But there was no turning back. "This is Evelyn Hayes," she began, her voice steady but with a hint of nervousness. "And what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about the world." She glanced at Marcus, who gave her a reassuring nod. "For years, powerful forces have been controlling the course of history, shaping reality itself. But today we expose them." She took a deep breath, her voice growing stronger. "We've uncovered the truth, and we're going to share it with the world, This is the beginning of the end of their control. The camera flickered slightly, and Evelyn's eyes narrowed. We are not afraid anymore. The broadcast had gone live, and for the first time, Evelyn felt the weight of their decision settle heavily upon her. Her phone buzzed with messages and notifications, most of them unreadable, some full of skepticism, and a few even threatening. Marcus stood next to her, his face pale. "This is really happening, isn't it?" he said, his voice quiet. Evelyn glanced at him, her expression unreadable. It's too late to turn back now. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments, the magnitude of their actions slowly sinking in. "We've stirred up something big, Marcus. They're going to come after us. You know that, right?" Marcus nodded, but his eyes were distant. "I know, but we've exposed them now. We've given people a chance to see the truth." Evelyn's lips tightened. "Now we just have to survive long enough to see if anyone believes it." The days following the broadcast were filled with a quiet chaos. Evelyn and Marcus had to keep moving, constantly on the move, unsure who to trust. Evelyn knew they were being watched, but there was no time to waste on paranoia. One evening, as they met in a small nondescript cafe, Marcus looked at her with concern. "Do you think it's working? Are people listening?" Evelyn took a deep breath, her mind racing. "I don't know. But I do know that they can't ignore us now. This is bigger than us. We've made them react." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "I am worried, Evelyn. They'll come for us, and we'll be caught in the middle of it all." Evelyn's expression hardened. "Let them come. We have the truth now, and that's something they can't erase." They couldn't stay in one place too long. Evelyn and Marcus knew they were being tracked, and the thought of being cornered was unbearable. Evelyn paced the small apartment, her thoughts racing. "We have to keep moving," she said, her voice urgent. "If we stay in one place for too long, they'll find us. We need to stay ahead of them." Marcus, sitting at the small kitchen table, looked up at her. "And where do we go? How do we keep running?" Evelyn's eyes met his. "We need to contact the others. We can't do this alone. There are more people out there who know. We just have to find them." Marcus shook his head. "And what if we can't find them? What if we're the only ones?" Evelyn paused for a moment, then spoke quietly but firmly. "Then we keep fighting alone, but we don't stop." As they moved to a new location, Evelyn's anxiety grew. The further they went, the less control they had over the situation. She sat in a dim hotel room, the glow of the TV flickering, her mind racing through the next steps. "We can't just keep running forever," she said, her voice filled with frustration. "We need a plan. Something concrete." Marcus sat beside her, his expression pensive. "And what if they find us? What if they're already tracking us?" Evelyn turned to him, her face serious. "Then we turn the tables, we stop running, we fight back." Marcus looked at her with a mixture of fear and awe. "And how do you suggest we do that?" Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes intense. "We take the fight to them. We find the source, the heart of this system, and we expose it all." The realization hit them both at once. The forces they were up against weren't just hidden. They were everywhere. Evelyn sat still, her mind reeling from the enormity of what they were facing. "We've been up against more than just a conspiracy," she said quietly, her voice filled with disbelief. "This is a system, a real working system that controls everything, every decision, every move." Marcus looked at her, his eyes wide. "You mean the government? The media?" Evelyn nodded slowly, her expression grim. "It's bigger than that. It's an entire network connected in ways we can't even imagine, and we've just scratched the surface." Marcus exhaled sharply. "So what now? How do we fight something so massive?" Evelyn stood up, her face filled with determination. "We find their heart and we destroy it, no matter the cost." Evelyn and Marcus sat in a darkened room, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. The air was thick with tension as they prepared for their next move. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she sorted through a new stack of documents, the evidence mounting. We can't keep hiding, she said, her voice barely a whisper. We have to take action now. Marcus stood by the window, looking out at the dark city. And what if we fail? What if we expose everything, and they just erase us? Evelyn didn't look up from the papers, but her voice was firm. Then we make sure they can't erase us. We get this out to the world, no matter the cost. Marcus turned to face her, his expression conflicted. I don't know if I'm ready for this, he admitted. Evelyn finally looked at him, her gaze intense. None of us are. But we don't have a choice anymore. This is bigger than us. As they made their way to the hidden location where they would release the information, Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. We need to be fast, she said, her voice taut with urgency. Once we hit the button, there's no going back. Marcus glanced at her, his face a mixture of fear and resolve. I know. But what if someone stops us before we can do it? Evelyn shook her head. They've already tried to stop us, Marcus. We can't let fear control us now. They reached the location. A dimly lit room filled with technology they could barely understand. This is it, Evelyn said, taking a deep breath. The world is about to change. Marcus nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. I hope you're right. The moment of truth arrived. Evelyn's fingers hovered above the keyboard, her heart pounding. Once we do this, there's no going back, she whispered, though she was speaking more to herself than to Marcus. Are you ready? Marcus nodded, though his voice was shaky. Ready as I'll ever be. Evelyn pressed the button. The screens blinked, and the files began uploading. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a flood of notifications appeared on the screen. It's happening, she said, her voice filled with both fear and triumph. But before they could react, the lights flickered, and the computers began to malfunction. Something's wrong, Marcus said, his voice tense. They found us, Evelyn said, her heart sinking. Chaos unfolded quickly. The screens went black, and alarms began to sound. We've been compromised, Marcus shouted, panic rising in his voice. Evelyn grabbed his arm. We need to go. Now. They ran for the exit, but as they reached the door, the lights cut out completely, plunging them into darkness. What's happening? Marcus asked, his voice sharp with fear. Evelyn grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the emergency exit. They're shutting us down, but it's too late. The files are out there now. As they burst through the door, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Run! Evelyn shouted. They darted into the night, the shadows of the city swallowing them whole. The world outside felt different, darker, more uncertain. They moved quickly through the streets, keeping their heads down as they tried to blend in. Evelyn could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, each step feeling heavier than the last. What now? Marcus asked, his voice strained. We keep moving, Evelyn replied, her gaze focused ahead. We've done our part. Now we wait and see if anyone else picks up on it. Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with questions. You really think they'll believe it? That people will see the truth? Evelyn didn't hesitate. I have to believe they will. They continued to walk, the weight of their actions settling on them both. We've done what we can, now we wait. The city was quieter than usual, almost as if holding its breath. Evelyn and Marcus had been on the move for days now, never staying in one place for too long. They were being hunted, and they both knew it. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up, Marcus said, his voice low, filled with exhaustion. Evelyn didn't look at him, her eyes scanning the dark street ahead. We don't have a choice, she replied firmly. We have to keep going. We've exposed them, Marcus. Now we just have to make sure the truth gets to everyone. Marcus sighed, his shoulders heavy with doubt. What if no one believes us? What if it's all just too much for people to accept? Evelyn stopped walking and turned to face him, her gaze intense. Then we show them. We keep pushing until they can't ignore us anymore. Evelyn's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the silence. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen, her expression unreadable. It's happening, she muttered under her breath. Marcus, who had been walking a few paces behind, caught up to her. "What is it?" he asked, his voice sharp with curiosity. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she read the message. "Someone's already picked it up. It's going viral," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and apprehension. "They're watching us, Evelyn," Marcus warned, his voice full of unease. "They're going to come after us harder now." Evelyn looked at him, a determined glint in her eyes. "Let them. The truth is already out. We can't hide from it anymore." The buzz of the city seemed to fade as Evelyn and Marcus sat in a quiet diner, watching the world continue without them. The news on the television in the corner displayed the storm of reactions to their broadcast. Some called them heroes, others called them terrorists. It was all happening too quickly, and Evelyn could feel the pressure mounting. "We've done it, Marcus. We've started something they can't undo," she said softly, her eyes focused on the screen. Marcus took a sip of his coffee, his mind racing. "But at what cost? They're going to come after us. We're targets now." Evelyn looked at him, her voice steady. "We knew the risk, but we're not the ones who started this fight. They did, and now we fight back." Marcus' gaze softened, a small hint of admiration in his eyes. "You're right, but we need to be smart. They're not going to stop until they silence us." The night felt colder as they stepped out of the diner, the weight of their decision hanging over them. Evelyn's mind was already racing, thinking of the next steps. "We need to get ahead of this," she said, her voice firm. "If we wait too long, they'll catch up to us. We need to take control of the narrative." Marcus looked around, his eyes scanning the shadows. "How do we do that? The whole world's watching us now." Evelyn's gaze was steely. "We make them watch us. We don't run. We lead." Marcus looked at her, a flash of uncertainty in his eyes. "Lead how?" Evelyn paused, her expression resolute. "We show them what's really happening. We give them the proof they need." Marcus hesitated, his doubt clear. "And what if they don't believe us?" Evelyn's voice was unwavering. "Then we'll show them again and again, until they have no choice but to see the truth." The days that followed were filled with a constant stream of messages, calls, and meetings. The world was reacting, and Evelyn and Marcus were at the center of it all. But as the pressure mounted, so did their resolve. One evening, as they sat in a safe house, Evelyn looked at Marcus, her face etched with exhaustion. "We've done all we can, Marcus. The truth is out there now. There's nothing they can do to take that away." Marcus nodded slowly, his eyes filled with both admiration and concern. "But what happens next?" he asked quietly. Evelyn looked at him, her voice steady. "We keep fighting, we expose everything, and we keep moving forward, because we're not done yet." Marcus took a deep breath, a look of understanding crossing his face. "No, we're not." The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as Evelyn and Marcus entered the abandoned building, their last safe house no longer secure. Evelyn's eyes scanned the darkened space, every creak of the floorboards setting her nerves on edge. "We've come too far to turn back now," Marcus said quietly, his voice a mixture of fear and resolve. Evelyn nodded, her gaze fixed ahead. "We don't have a choice. If we want to finish this, we have to confront them. Head on." Marcus stepped closer, his expression serious. "I know, but what if they're already here? What if we've been walking into their trap all along?" Evelyn paused, then answered firmly. "Then we'll expose them for good. We take the fight to them." She gripped the flashlight tightly, determined. "This ends tonight." The building felt like a maze. Every turn was another dead end, every creak of the floor echoing through the silence. Evelyn's mind raced as she thought about what was coming next. "We can't keep running forever," she whispered. "We have to bring this to an end." Marcus stopped in his tracks, looking back at her with concern. "But how do we do that, Evelyn? How do we expose them if they have every corner of this world covered?" Evelyn clenched her fists, her gaze unwavering. "We find their core. We expose the heart of this system, and everything else will fall." Marcus exhaled sharply. "And what if we can't? What if the heart is too well hidden?" Evelyn's expression softened slightly, but her determination remained. Then we dig deeper until we find it. After what felt like hours of searching, they reached the basement. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of decay hung in the air. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed forward. "This is it," she whispered. Marcus turned to her, his face tense with fear. "Are you sure? We don't know what's down there." Evelyn nodded, her voice steady. "We'll never know until we go." As they descended the stairs, the walls seemed to close in around them, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on them. At the bottom, a large metal door stood before them, locked and imposing. "This is it," Marcus said softly. "This is where it all ends." Evelyn stepped forward, her hand on the cold handle. "Let's make it count." The door creaked open with a groan, revealing a dimly lit room filled with rows of computers and flickering screens. At the far end, a figure sat in front of a terminal, seemingly unaware of their presence. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "This is it. This is where it all comes together," she said quietly. Marcus hesitated, his voice low. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" Evelyn turned to him, her eyes filled with resolve. "We have no other choice." They stepped into the room, the figure at the terminal still unaware. "Excuse me," Evelyn said, her voice steady but commanding. The gear turned slowly, a small smirk forming on their lips. "You're too late," they said, their voice cold and calculating. "This is bigger than you think." The figure stood up slowly, walking toward them with a chilling calmness. "You think you can just waltz in here and expose everything? You've already lost," they said, their voice filled with menace. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists, but she stood her ground. "Not yet," she replied, her voice low and filled with defiance. "This ends now. We've already won. The truth is out, and you can't stop it." The figure's smile faded, their eyes narrowing. "You don't understand," they said, their tone cold. "The game was never about control. It was about shaping the future. You've exposed a part of it, but there's much more you don't even know." Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes hard. "Then we'll keep digging. Until we uncover everything. Until you have nothing left." The figure paused, then let out a quiet laugh. "You'll regret this," they said. But Evelyn and Marcus didn't look back. They had already won.